So we've got a first look at The Blood of Dawnwalker, a brand new open-world third-person RPG made by former CD Projekt Red devs, and this game is really making the rounds right now. If you haven't seen anything of it just yet, pretty much it's a mix between The Witcher, Vampire the Masquerade, but with some incredible twists that you don't see that often nowadays. So we've got a huge developer interview, we've also got the first ever teaser trailer with some extra gameplay reveals, so lots more to talk about, and let's jump right in. Now, in Blood of Dawnwalker, you get to play as Cohen, a young man turned into a Dawnwalker, forever treading the line between the world of day and the realm of night. So not completely human, but not completely vampire either. In the trailer, we can see him trying to save his sister who has been affected by the plague before the vampires intervene, and it's likely this is how we also get our powers, but also how Cohen gets his motivation. And the game will feature a very interesting mechanic here where you'll get to play and fight differently, even have different mechanics depending if it's during the day or during the night. So because of his lead poisoning from working in the mines, during the day you're just a regular old human, you fight with normal weapons such as a sword, and you can't really use any superpowers either and can even be killed like every other human. However, things change during the night because this is when you get to play as a vampire with much stronger abilities that help both in combat and exploration likewise. Just from the trailer, we can see Cohen using his bare hands to slide down an entire building. He can also pull off this vampire phase shift, and his attacks with melee or well hand hits are also much stronger here. So yeah, pretty much expect that, but the developers mentioned that there will be more abilities in the vampire theme, and it's also very likely that he's going to have a much easier time to traverse environments at nighttime, as we can see him at the top of buildings. So it sounds very interesting, and in fact it's very much needed because during nighttime in this game, this is when the most strongest of enemies get to spawn. Not just other vampires, but other creatures of the night as well. So undead and other creatures from Eastern European folklore. Besides that, we also have some information about another mechanic called blood hunger. So vampires have to feed on blood, right? It's pretty basic. And this affects more than just your ability to cast abilities or not. You also get to, for example, influence how you react to other human beings. Say, for example, you talk to somebody but you haven't fed in a while. Well, you may lose control and end up eating that person instead. In fact, in a recent developer interview, they mentioned that it's entirely possible to even accidentally eat one of your allies or close friends while losing control in such a way, which can actually lead to breaking the quest lines for that character. I find this a very interesting concept. I'm gonna give them that at the very least. It sounds like a very cool concept to have this double-edged sword. So you have these powers that make you very strong, but you do have to feed on people or find other ways to do so. And if you don't properly manage it, you may end up eating somebody you never intended to. And from the game's promotion materials, there seem to be many big such choices to be made over here. To fight for your own humanity or to embrace the cursed powers to save your family. Now, in terms of the game setting, it takes place in a fictional 14th century kingdom called Vale Sangora, located in the Carpathian Mountains. So it's predominantly Romanian motifs combined with folklore from other countries in Eastern Europe, as well as architectural inspirations. So we can see some very Eastern European inspired villages, Gothic architectures, especially for churches, cathedrals, and whatnot. As somebody from Romania myself, I'm really excited to see how Rebel Wolves is bringing some of these concepts to life, and especially at such a scale. Obviously, the game isn't striving for historical realism. There's lots of creative liberty over here, and it definitely shows from some of the concept art, but I mean, it looks so cool that, I mean, it's been a while since I've been so excited for a game. Now, as far as the world itself, besides being all dark and gritty, the continent is in deep crisis. The land has been ravaged by war, famine, and plague. So as the population struggles for survival, this moment of humanity's weakness is what leads to the vampires seizing the power. Its leader goes by the name of Brancis, who's this powerful and ancient vampire, and we can see him also being directly involved in the attack on Cohen's family in the cinematic trailer. But he also forms an alliance with 3 other very powerful vampires, and we've seen what they are capable of in the trailer. One appears to be much larger and uses brute strength to crush its enemies, but another one appears to be a former knight, a skilled swordsman with extra vampire abilities. However, the third one is most interesting to me. They appear to use blood manipulation to both damage and even disintegrate their enemies, which should give us a rough idea of what type of combat and abilities we should expect from this game. And besides that, we've seen this bigger brute vampire that just uses brute force to absolutely smash his enemies, so I'm already liking the diversity in terms of archetypes we see. It's not just like typical vampires, but they actually have abilities enhanced by the fact that they are vampires. And this is what kickstarts Cohen's motivation. We see that his sister, who's been affected by the plague, somehow gets saved, likely by the vampiric powers, so she herself also becomes a vampire, but Cohen also has to now save his family. And the narrative revolves around the idea that you have a limited time, 30 in-game days, to save them. But that doesn't advance in real time. In fact, you rather complete objectives and quests, and that is how time progresses in game. So it's almost becoming like a resource of its own that you spend and manage, because you have to make this conscious decision if you're going to prioritize certain quests and missions over others. So you do have to be smart about it. But this also means that in between missions and bigger events, you are completely free to explore and not have to worry about the passage of time. And there are many secrets that exist out there for us to discover. Furthermore, even saving our family is a matter of choice from the looks of it. It seems that it's entirely optional, so I can already imagine at least a couple of possible playthroughs where we get to maybe choose different outcomes, like in one in which we focus on saving humanity, or another one in which we embrace our vampire side. Now, like I said, the game being open world opens up a whole bunch of possibilities, because some of these vampires manage to overthrow existing feudal lords to take control over their castles. So looking at the interview, it's kind of giving me some Shadow of Mordor vibes over here. Like, you have these castles that you now have the choice to liberate or not, and they are most likely infested by vampires and other creatures of the night that we have to take down, and that is right up my alley. Also interesting to note is, as they've taken control, vampires also managed to create this twisted religion of sorts that convinced the local folk that in order to get protection, they must offer a blood tax in return. So there are these rituals where essentially all humans, being young or old, weak or frail, they have to make this blood sacrifice. And some of them may not like that, which may cause some friction and maybe even factions that you can go ahead and recruit or help in their rebellion. But Brancis is also an active antagonist, which is what Dave mentioned in the recent interview, not just a boss waiting for you to take down at the end of the story, because along the way, he takes notes of your actions and will pass these edicts that will try to hinder your path. So for example, one of them was given to the fact that he can set up military checkpoints in various locations, but there are many other changes that the open world will suffer as you go in and progress in the game, which gives this a lot of reactivity. This is what I love seeing in open world games, the game actually reacting to you and what you do. So I really enjoy when there's this level of reactivity from the world instead of all being static and waiting for me to do my next move. I do love the fact that it adapts to you, and again, drawing that parallel to Shadow of Mordor, even though it's not the same mechanic because obviously that is trademarked, it does seem that they found a solution to actually bring something similar to it in terms of game design. And this brings me to the quest design. Developer Rebel Wolves wants to give players narrative freedom so that not everyone will have the same experience. You get to craft your own path and make your own decisions. But what this actually means typically in video games, this is why I'm taking it with a grain of salt. Typically what this does is that you have a few major story decisions with some more minor ones sprinkled along the way that may change how some events unfold or maybe give you a few diverging paths that you can choose. So I wouldn't take it quite so literally, even though it does sound ambitious for a 100 or so developer team. Rather that the game will feature, as the recent interview also pointed out, a lot of replayability. Think of it as maybe Phantom Liberty, where you could choose different outcomes depending who you sided with in different like missions and whatnot. So I think that this is what they are ultimately aiming for. Obviously there are many other choices along the way. They even talked about the fact that you can just go in and do everything solo, like just grab a sword and start slashing at everyone. But you can also strive to make allies, make allegiances, and maybe even get involved with some of the rebel factions, like I said. Choose if certain characters live or die and whatnot, according to the recent interview. Still, the highlight here is that this is an open world game. Choices will play a huge factor both in the main narrative and outside of it. Anyway, no release date just yet, but we do know that the game is being developed in Unreal Engine 5 and is scheduled to release on both Windows as well as on the current gen consoles. It's been in development for at least a couple of years now. I think that the development team was put together around 2022, and eventually it grew out to around 90 or so developers and other folks working on the game. So at the very least, there's like 90 to 100 people working on the game right now, which means it's going to be a while until we get to actually see a release date. But it seems that they are quite in an advanced state. As IGN reported, there are some big previews and gameplay showcases planned this year, so I cannot wait to check those out. I really want to see more of the gameplay because the more I see of it, the more interested I am, especially the concept. Everything sounds right up my alley, and having this reactive role right here, yeah, makes me very optimistic, but maybe in a cautious way. Anyway, that is pretty much it for now. Thanks much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.